Toyota Hilux SR5 runs about $65,720 drive away. A Ford Ranger Wildtrak is closer to $70,490. But there's a group of Utes on dealer floors undercutting those prices by $20,000 to $35,000, and almost nobody's buying them. One carries a 7-year, unlimited kilometre warranty and costs more than $30,000 less than that Ranger. Another is backed by a company whose trucks have clocked over 1 million kilometres each as couriers. 5 dirt cheap Utes Australia has walked past, and why the last one might be the smartest buy an older tradie makes this year. The construction workforce in this country has been getting greyer for a while now. Between 1997 and 2017, the number of tradies under 30 grew by less than 1%. The number of tradies over 50 grew by more than 6% over that same stretch. There are more blokes your age turning up to job sites with tools in the tray than there were 20 years ago, and the ute industry hasn't caught up. Every ad on telly is still selling a Ranger Raptor to a bloke doing burnouts on a Saturday, not the bloke who wants his ute still running the day he finally hangs up the tools. At the same time, the whole light commercial market's gone soft. April 2026 saw 17,408 utes and vans sold across the country, down 14.8% on the same month last year, and year-to-date sales are running more than 6,200 units behind where they were in 2025. Buyers are pulling back on finance for big-ticket work vehicles, and yet Chinese badged brands alone grew from around 9% of the 4x4 ute segment in early 2024 to roughly 17.6% by early this year. New players are showing up faster than most tradies can keep track of, with names like Bide, Golmum, Jack, LDV and Foton all fighting for a slice of a market that used to belong almost entirely to Toyota, Ford, Isuzu and Mitsubishi. That's exactly how a ute can undercut the market leaders on price, warranty and equipment, and still sell next to nothing. Nobody's had the time to work out which of the new names are worth trusting yet, so most buyers default to whatever their old boss drove, or whatever's parked out the front of the biggest dealership in town. If you're closer to the end of your working life than the start of it, none of that market noise should matter as much as 3 questions. Will the warranty actually outlast how long you plan to keep the thing? Will your local mechanic, the one who already knows your name, be able to service it without ordering parts from the other side of the country? And will the repayment actually let you retire on schedule instead of stretching 6 more years to pay off a ute you didn't need to spend that much on? Answer those 3 honestly, and a $200 cheaper stereo system or a fancier grille stops mattering very much. There's a finance angle here too, and it's worth a mention if you run your own Aben. Most tradies buying a ute for work still finance it through a chattel mortgage, and the maths on that only gets better the lower the purchase price sits, since you're borrowing less and clearing the loan faster either way. A cheaper ute also means a smaller comprehensive insurance premium every year it's on the road, and a smaller number sitting on the asset register if you're the sort of bloke thinking about winding the business down in the next 5 or 10 years, rather than expanding it. None of the 5 utes on this list are going to out-tow a genuine 3-ton 5 setup like the big diesel Rangers. But every one of them will happily pull a box trailer, a small boat, or the camper you're planning to drag around the country once the tools go in the shed for good. There's also a trust problem sitting underneath all of this. Finance companies, insurers and dealers pushing the big 3 tend to price and talk down anything with a badge you haven't heard of. And resale on a lesser known brand can lag a Ranger or a Hilux in the first few years while it builds a track record. None of that makes any of these 5 utes a bad buy. It just means you're trading a small amount of resale certainty for cash saved on day one. And for a bloke planning to run the thing into the ground rather than trade it in, that trade usually comes out ahead. That's the gap these 5 Utes are sitting in, quietly, cheap enough that you're not still paying it off at 70. Backed by a warranty long enough to outlast how long you'll actually keep the thing. Simple enough that the mechanic down the road already knows how to fix it. Let's start with number 5. Number 5, the Foton Tunland. Foton isn't actually new to Australia. The brand had a crack at this market back in 2012, distributed at various points by a Queensland outfit and then by a Teco, and quietly vanished for the better part of a decade before Inchcape. The same distributor that handles Subaru locally brought it back in 2025 with an all-new Tunland, built almost half a size bigger than a Hilux, and styled like it borrowed a few sketches from a Ford F-150. The entry-level V7C, a 2-wheel drive model without low-range gearing, starts from $39,990 before on road costs. Step up to the 4-wheel drive V7 and you're looking at $42,990. And the flagship V9S tops out under $50,000 list. Every Tunland runs the same 2.0 litre turbo diesel with a 48 volt mild hybrid system bolted on, putting out 120 kilowatts and 450 newton meters through a ZF 8-speed automatic. The same transmission family you'll find bolted into plenty of European SUVs. It tows 3,500 kilograms braked, matching a Ranger, rides on 240 millimeters of ground clearance, and the cabin is noticeably roomier than most Utes in this price bracket. That matters more than you'd think once you're spending 45 minutes a day climbing in and out of the thing on a knee that isn't 25 anymore. Drive modes run through Eco, Standard, Sport, Sand, Mud and Snow, which sounds like marketing fluff until you remember most of the Utes Tradies bought new in the 90s and early 2000s didn't have a single one of those, and you just worked with what you had. Foton backs the Tunland with what it calls its 777 program. 7 years of unlimited kilometre warranty, 7 years of roadside assistance, and 7 years of capped price servicing, working out to roughly $4,492 total across those 7 years if you keep to the 12-month, 15,000 kilometre schedule. That's genuinely competitive against what Toyota or Ford charges over the same stretch. And for a bloke planning to run one Ute until retirement, 7 years of predictable service bills is worth something on its own. Reviewers who've actually driven it describe the steering as good, the cabin as pleasant, and the mechanicals as refined enough to surprise people who wrote it off as another cheap knockoff on site. Inside, the entry model still gets a decent-sized touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and the tray itself is deep enough to fit a full-size Aussie pallet without the tailgate hanging open. The catch, and there's usually a catch with a comeback brand, is that the Tunland hadn't been given an ANCAP safety rating as of April 2026, with testing still pending. Early reviews also flagged an automatic braking system that intervenes more aggressively than it needs to, an inconsistent mild hybrid system, and some early cars that left the factory with no tow bar fitted and a tailgate owners couldn't lock. Foton's covering close to 30 dealerships across the country at this point, which is thin next to Toyota's network, but not nothing if you're anywhere near a capital city or a major regional centre. None of these issues are deal breakers on a work ute that mostly does trips to the tip and the timber yard, but they're worth knowing before you sign anything, especially if you're the sort of buyer who'd rather wait a year for the second model year to iron out the wrinkles than be the one reporting them. One thing worth test driving for yourself before you write the Tunland off over that missing ANCAP score is the seating position. Because the cabin's built on a bigger frame than most Utes in this bracket, the seat sits higher off the ground and the door opening is wider, which some older owners have found easier on a dodgy hip or a bad back than climbing down into a lower, tighter cabin every single day. That's not something you'll find on a spec sheet, But it's exactly the kind of detail that matters more once you've spent 30 years getting in and out of work vehicles. Foton sold just 88 of these in April 2026, against tens of thousands of Rangers and Hiluxes moving in the same month. For a buyer who wants the biggest cabin and tray for the smallest outlay and doesn't mind being an early adopter on a returning brand, the Tunland earns its spot on this list. If weekend towing is part of your retirement plan, that 3,500 kilogram rating and the extra cabin room make it a genuine contender for hauling a caravan without shelling out Ranger money to do it. For a bloke who wants zero surprises at this stage of his working life though, it's a step further out on the ledge than he needs to go, which is exactly why the next Ute plays it a lot safer. Number 4, the Jack T9. If you want the cheapest brand new dual cab 4x4 diesel Ute sold in Australia today, full stop, this is it. Jack's drive-away deal on the Oasis and Trade Pro cab chassis sits at $38,990, and that Trade Pro version throws in a genuine Jack alloy tray for free, which on its own would usually run you another couple of grand fitted. The T9 launched here in 2024, powered by a 2.0-litre turbo diesel, making 125 kilowatts and 410 newton meters. Jack originally advertised a 3,500 kilogram towing figure before quietly revising it down to 3,000 kilograms. It's a reminder to read the spec sheet twice, and credit where it's due, Jack didn't try to bury the correction. The T9 lines up against the GUM Cannon, the KGM Musso we're about to cover, and the LDV T60 further down this list, and on paper, it undercuts most of them on price, while matching or beating them on warranty length. Where the T9 actually stands out is safety and warranty. It carries a 5-star ANCAP rating from testing done in 2024, and Jack has been calling it Australia's safest Ute based on how it's scored across all 4 of ANCAP's assessment categories. That's not just a badge on the tailgate either. Standard kit includes autonomous emergency braking that works in reverse as well as forward, lane keeping assist, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, adaptive cruise control, tyre pressure monitoring, speed sign recognition, and a proper reversing camera, most of which you'd have paid extra for on a base model rival a few years back. There are ISOFIX child seat anchor points across both outer rear seats too, which is worth knowing if grandkids are ever riding along on a weekend job or a trip to the footy. For a bloke whose reflexes aren't quite what they were at 25, that stacked safety kit isn't a marketing bullet point. It's the equipment doing some of the watching for you. Every T9 also comes with a 7-year, unlimited kilometre warranty, 7 years of roadside assistance, and capped price servicing that averages out to about $477 a visit across the first 7 scheduled services, for a total of $3,340 over 105,000 kilometres. Jack's built out a network of 62 dealers around the country to support all this, which for a brand that's only been here since 2024 is a genuinely fast rollout. The company has leaned hard into the tradie side of the market too, estimating around 60% of its Ute buyers customise their vehicles, which is why it added a dedicated cab chassis variant. Essentially a blank canvas for whatever tray or service body you actually need, rather than one you're stuck working around. Reviewers have generally been kind to the value on offer, while admitting the T9 doesn't do anything to reinvent the class it's competing in. And honestly, at this stage of life, reinventing the wheel isn't usually what you're after anyway. It's also worth knowing Jack itself isn't some fly-by-night operation chasing a quick buck in a new market. The parent company's been building trucks and commercial vehicles in China for more than 6 decades, and it's one of the country's biggest exporters of Utes and light commercials, which is a longer manufacturing history than plenty of brands Australians consider safe, boring choices. The T9 is simply the first passenger vehicle Jack's brought here to put that history to the test. Here's the part that doesn't add up on paper. Despite being the cheapest ute in the country, with the longest warranty and the top safety score, Jack only sold 56 T9s in April 2026, down 51.8% compared with the same month a year earlier. Only 359 have found homes across the first 4 months of 2026 nationally. For a ute doing everything right on a spec sheet, that's about as unloved as new car sales get, and it says more about how little most buyers actually cross-shop the budget end of the market than it does about the T9 itself. If you're the sort of bloke who's done chasing badges and just wants the biggest warranty and the smallest number on the windscreen, the T9 is hard to argue with on paper. It's also worth pointing out that the towing correction Jack made, dropping the claim from 3,500 to 3,000 kilograms, is a bigger deal for someone planning to tow a family caravan every second weekend than it is for a tradie mostly hauling gear around a work site during the week. Match the number to what you'll actually be pulling before you get swept up in the rest of the spec sheet. It's a small correction in the scheme of things, but it's the kind of detail worth checking on any of these 5 utes before you sign, not just this one. Whether the rest of the market ever catches on to everything else the T9 gets right is a different question entirely. Number 3, the KGM Musso. You might remember this one under a different name. KGM Musso used to be sold as the SsangYong Musso, and when the Korean parent company changed hands and rebranded to KG Mobility a few years back, a lot of buyers simply stopped recognizing it on the showroom floor, which is a large part of why it's sitting this low on a sales chart it probably shouldn't be. It's the same engineering team, the same factory, and largely the same ute underneath, just wearing a new set of letters on the tailgate, competing directly against the Ranger, Hilux and Triton on price, rather than trying to out-tech any of them. The current generation Musso has been on sale here since 2021, so it's had years to work out its teething problems, unlike a couple of the utes further up this list. Pricing for the Elks starts at $42,500 drive away, running a 2-litre turbo diesel producing 133 kilowatts and up to 420 newton meters, paired with a 6-speed automatic and a proper dual-range 4x4 system with a locking rear differential. It rides on 215 millimeters of ground clearance, carries a 75-litre fuel tank good for over 870 kilometers between fill-ups, and tows 3,500 kilograms braked, right up there with the segment leaders. There's also a long wheelbase XLV version if you need extra tray length for ladders or timber, for around $1,500 more across the range. KGM backs every Musso with a 7-year, unlimited kilometre warranty, plus 5 years of roadside assistance. The Musso isn't flashy inside, and the entry-level Elks cabin materials remind you exactly where the price cuts happened, with a live leaf spring rear axle that's tuned more for load carrying than comfort. Climb into the mid-spec Advance or the top Ultimate, and the rear axle switches to coil springs for a noticeably smoother ride, and you'll find heated and ventilated seats, a heated leather steering wheel and dual-zone climate control, features that used to be reserved for utes $20,000 more expensive. It won't out-tech a Ranger, but mechanically this thing has been sold in one form or another for decades, and it shows in how unremarkable the ownership experience tends to be. Plenty of Musso owners have gone back and bought a second one, and that isn't the kind of thing that happens with a ute that's letting people down. There's a genuine 12.3-inch touchscreen running Apple CarPlay and Android Auto across the range too, so you're not stuck with last decade's tiny display just because the badge is unfamiliar. It's also worth knowing that KGM now sells a fully electric Musso, priced from around $60,000 drive away, as the country's cheapest electric ute and backed by a 10-year battery warranty. That's not the vehicle we're talking about here. For a tradie watching every dollar, the Diesel Elks remains the one doing the actual value work on this list, and it's the one showing up in these low sales figures while the flashier electric version grabs the headlines. There's also something worth saying about buying from a brand mid-rebrand. Owners who've had a Musso through the name change generally report the same experience before and after, because nothing mechanical moved when the paperwork did. If you can look past a name you don't recognize, you're getting a product with a genuine track record at a price that reflects confusion in the marketplace, rather than anything wrong with the Ute itself. KGM moved 132 of these in April 2026. That beats the Jack and the Foton, though it's still well short of what a decade on the market and a genuinely competitive spec sheet should be delivering. Part of that is the name confusion. Part of it is simply that most buyers walk straight to the Ranger or the Hilux without ever putting a Musso on the shortlist to compare against. And a badge change is really a marketing problem rather than anything mechanical. Talk to anyone who's actually owned one under either name, and the conversation tends to be short. It started, it towed what it was supposed to tow, and it didn't cost a fortune to keep on the road. That's the kind of review a tradie actually wants to hear about the vehicle he's about to spend $40,000 on. If you're the kind of person still cross-shopping Utes properly, instead of buying whatever's sitting on the yard because it's familiar, that's exactly the habit this channel exists to encourage. Hit subscribe if you want a new Australian Ute or car news story broken down like this every week. Now, back to the countdown, because the next two Utes on this list might be the sharpest value in the entire segment. Number 2, the LDV T60. This is the most established name on the whole list. The T60 first landed in Australia back in 2017, which means it's had close to a decade to work the bugs out, build a genuine parts network, and get itself into the service books of small-town mechanics who wouldn't have known what to do with it back when it launched. Pricing sits at $40,490 drive away, running a 2.0-litre turbo diesel, making 120 kilowatts and 400 newton meters through an 8-speed automatic, with a claimed fuel figure of 8.1 litres per 100 kilometres. Payload comes in at 995 kilograms, and it'll tow 3,200 kilograms braked, both entirely respectable numbers for a Ute at this price. It comes in both cab chassis and pickup body styles too, so you're not locked into one tray configuration if your work changes down the track. LD backs it with a 7-year warranty capped at 200,000 kilometres. Worth flagging, because a couple of the newer Utes on this list offer unlimited kilometres instead. If you're planning on genuinely working this thing hard, that cap is the one number on this whole list worth checking against your own annual kilometres before you sign. The T60 carries a 5-star ANCAP rating, but it's worth being upfront that the rating dates back to testing in 2021, under an older and less demanding version of ANCAP's protocol than the one the Jack T9 faced in 2024. Worth knowing that context before you put too much weight on comparing the 2-star ratings side by side. Reviewers have also been fairly blunt that the current T60 lacks some of the polish, tech and safety gear you'll find on the Ranger or Hilux, and that the heavy-duty suspension on the Pro variant trades some ride comfort for load carrying, which matters if you're mostly running around empty between jobs rather than hauling a full tray every day. If comfort on the daily commute matters more to you than outright payload, it's worth test driving the standard suspension setup before committing to the Pro. What the T60 has that none of the others on this list can claim yet is a track record. Almost a decade of real Australian owners, real workshops, and real resale data exist for this Ute, which takes a lot of the guesswork out of buying one. You're not betting on a brand's first Australian summer, its first stretch of corrugated outback road, or its first crack at towing a caravan through the Adelaide Hills in January. Somebody's already done that, and the T60's still turning up in used car listings with high kilometres and no horror stories attached. LDV sold 214 of them in April 2026, Easily the strongest result of the 4 Utes we've covered so far. Though it's still a rounding error next to the thousands of Rangers and Hiluxes moving in the same month. For a Ute that's been quietly working Australian job sites for almost 10 years, without much fanfare, that's about as solid a track record as this list gets. You don't see a lot of complaints about the T60 turning up online, and after a decade on sale, that's usually a good sign rather than a boring one. There's an electric version too, the ET60, but it sits well above the diesel on price and isn't really aimed at the buyer this list is written for. The diesel dual cab is where the actual value sits, and it's the one most likely to be sitting quietly on a dealer lot waiting for someone to notice it. For a tradie who wants most of the upside of buying something unfashionable, cheap running costs, a low sticker price, without taking on the risk of a brand that only just turned up, the T60 is the safer bet of everything covered so far. But the Ute that tops this list does something the T60 can't quite match, and it does it for even less money. Number 1. The Mahindra Pik-Up. This is the cheapest new 4x4 diesel dual cab Ute sold in Australia. Full stop. Depending on the model year and spec you land on, pickup pricing has run from the low $30,000 right up through the low $40,000 drive away, which still undercuts every other Ute on this list and puts more than $25,000 of daylight between it and that Ranger Wildtrak we opened with. It's powered by a 2.2-litre turbo diesel, a proper switchable 4x4 system with high and low range, and a locking rear differential. None of the mild hybrid systems or driver assist software the newer Utes on this list are still working the kinks out of. Payload sits at a genuinely useful 1,035 kilograms, with 2,500 kilograms of braked towing on offer. Mahindra backs it with a 5-year, 150,000 kilometre warranty. Genuine parts covered for 6 months or 10,000 kilometres. And accessories for 12 months or 20,000 kilometres. With capped price servicing starting at a free first service at 5,000 kilometres. Then $499 a visit after that at 10,000 kilometre intervals. One motoring outlet put the Pik-Up up against the famously tough Toyota Land Cruiser 70 series to see if the budget option could keep pace with a genuine Outback workhorse. And while nobody's pretending the Pik-Up matches a Land Cruiser's off-road pedigree, the fact that comparison gets made at all tells you the Ute's earned more respect than its price tag suggests. Mahindra has been selling Utes in this country since 2007. Longer than the T60. Longer than the current Musso. Longer than every other Ute on this list. It's not a sophisticated thing to drive, and it won't pretend to be. There's no wireless charging pad, no massive touchscreen, no drive mode dial with 6 settings for terrain you'll probably never see. What it has instead is a diesel engine, a ladder frame, and 2 decades of Australian dealers who've seen every fault this thing can throw at them and know exactly how to fix it, usually cheaply. Mahindra has already previewed a next-generation pickup built on a new global platform with more tech and a beefier engine. But until that lands, the current model keeps selling at these prices, which if anything makes it an even better buy while it's still available new. There's genuine value in buying the simple, well-understood version of something right before the replacement turns up loaded with first-year software glitches of its own. The reliability case for it isn't a marketing line either. It's a Newcastle courier company. 3 Mahindra Pik-Ups in that fleet have each clocked over 1 million kilometres, with a 4th closing in on the same number. That's 3 separate Utes doing the same delivery runs, in the same traffic and the same weather, for years on end, still on the road and still working. And that's really the whole story here. For years. Mahindra didn't even report its Australian sales figures to the industry body that every other manufacturer reports to, which means its actual volume in this country has been genuinely invisible in the official data, Not just low, invisible. The company has only confirmed it plans to start publishing sales figures from 2026 onward. So while Jack's collapsing to 56 units a month and Foton's struggling to crack 90, the truth is, nobody's even been able to say for certain how many pickups Australians have been quietly buying and running into the ground for 2 decades. There's also something in this for a bloke easing off the tools rather than working full pace. If you're down to 3 or 4 days a week, or picking up the odd job here and there instead of running a full crew, you don't need a ute rated to survive a mine site. You need something cheap to buy, cheap to insure, cheap to service twice a year, and reliable enough that it starts every single time without you thinking about it. That's precisely the gap between what the Ranger and the Hilux are built to do and what the Pik-Up is built to do. And for a lot of blokes in their 50s and 60s, the Pik-Up's job description matches their own a lot more closely than a $70,000 flagship ever will. That's the pick for a tradie who's done paying for badges. It's the cheapest sticker on this entire list. It's already proven itself over 1 million kilometers in fleets that can't afford a truck that doesn't start, and it costs less to service and less to insure than anything else we've covered today. Line all 5 of these utes up next to each other, and the pattern is obvious once you see it. The one selling worst against the biggest spec sheet, the one with the most established name, and the one that's been quietly working this country's roads the longest are all cheaper than a base model Ranger, and every single one of them would happily outlast the loan you'd need to buy one. If you want to see how the mainstream utes stack up against each other on this same value question, that comparison's coming soon on this channel.